Monday, May 22nd. This one's going to be a fairly longer video, so that we can do a me recording thing, or sorry, the telling of the story thing we'll get into. See, grades, B points are updated. If you have not turned in the test, it did go in as a 0. I will update that once you have turned it in. Just so you are aware, I have also emailed parents and let them know to check grades to make sure things get turned in.
That's why my mom.
And I apologize if your parents yell at you, because I already had parents reply to this morning saying, "I'm going to take my child tonight." I said, "Don't beat them yet." B points also updated. Finally, if you have school iPad, remember, you give up your school. She gives good advice. iPad on Wednesday, so make sure you have anything turned in from it before Wednesday, unless you're planning on trying to do work on your phone or a home computer or something like that. Tomorrow, we get to last story, but I'm also taking class picture tomorrow, just so that you are aware. And so, you should.
I know most of those.
Oh wait,
people.
I know.
I know some. That's terrifying.
Wait, that kid's in 9th grade.
I've seen them go.
The kid in the middle, he has such a high-pitched voice.
You know, they don't check your voice when you let you graduate. Tomorrow, I will be doing the same thing with you guys. I take a picture of where you are sitting in the classroom, and then I take a full group picture. And then I will send out this version of the picture on Remind, so in case you want to see picture, you will get a chance to see it. But the idea being is that I then have classroom pictures for years. On the off chance some of you guys graduate high school, if you ever invite me to your open house, which is your little high school graduation party, I write you a letter and then give you a collection of pictures from 7th grade, and so you get to have like a little walk down this class and stuff like that. So tomorrow's the day I take that picture. If you are wanting things, you can still see me before or after class, unless it is the signing of it for 75 points. If you're doing the signing, just let me know and we can have you do that. But soon this week, I will be putting it back onto my podium so that people can see your signatures. I do have an open spot for Charger Challenge, because I had a kid that had a baseball game get moved to Tuesday, and so they had to drop out. So I do have an open spot if you are interested. But prior to that, Jimmy Jam, Grop, whenever. So you guys are good? Good. Tomorrow after school?
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Good combo. Yes.
Right after.
The podium, tomorrow during class. That's fine with me. Just remind me at the start and I'll let you go over and do it. Okay. And again, take test or retake test, let me know and I will update. If I forget, just send me an email, because I check them as often as I can remember to. But if parents are yelling at you and you want it taken care of sooner, send me email and that'll be my remindery thing. And again, you can retake if you want, but it just drops at a letter grade each time. But that's up to you. Alright. Today's story is a longer story than the other one, and today's is less funny, unfortunately, because it's more emotional. This is the story I told to Clayton and Lindsay when they came back. This is the one that was the first story I started telling to kids. Last Friday was a fun story because you got to laugh at me because I was an idiot, and it was all kinds of fun. Today is much more depressing. Tomorrow we go back to fun and laughing at me again, because my last arrest was me being an idiot again. I mean, I was an idiot for this one. It was just an idiot and depressing. Wednesday we go depressing again. So it's sort of like a little roller coaster. You're going to go last day. And for you guys, we should have a chance for my bonus story, which is the fight I got into, this fight in 8th grade, and so I get to tell you the story about that. That is only the classes that meet on Thursday and the ones that have enough time and not a whole bunch of chaos. So we have this choice, and we get to this choice. So, I managed to keep myself out of trouble for 7 years, all the way through junior high until beginning of high school, and that's when I got arrested for the second time. This one, though, technically starts in 8th grade, because that is when my poor choices began. I just didn't get caught until freshman year, but I started the poor choices in 8th grade. Today's story is a little bit tougher for me to tell because there are emotions connected to it. This was the one that still kind of hurts to tell, just because of what all went into it. Last Friday's story, I enjoy because you get to laugh at me and my little escapades as an 8-year-old. But today's story, I was a bad kid. I made choices I definitely shouldn't have. I started shoplifting in my 8th grade year. And it started because there was a group of kids shoplifting at my junior high. And they would go out and steal electronics from Walmart and Target. And then they would resell them to kids at school to make money. And I was like, those kids are idiots. Not because they were shoplifting. I thought that part was genius. I thought the idiot part was just seeing them in class. And I was like, that kid's an idiot and he can get away with shoplifting. If an idiot can do it, what could a genius child do? And I thought of myself as a genius child. So I decided to try shoplifting. And it turns out I was good at it. Way better at it than I should have been. I justified it by what I stole. And I only stole candy and comic books. And in my mind, that made it okay. What in real life, what it made me was a criminal who was a nerd. But I thought it just made things okay. And I got really frighteningly skilled at shoplifting to the point where I would do it in front of cops because I enjoyed the thrill. And to the point where I would steal so much candy that I couldn't eat it all. And I would just give it to other kids. And I would bring in like a bag full of candy to the class and I would just hand it to other children. Because I really wanted to be popular and I thought I could buy kids' affection by giving them candy. And it turns out I was right. Until it all came crashing down. And one day, this is my freshman year. I had now been at this activity for a little under a year. And I was on the wrestling team when I was in high school. I started in 8th grade and then wrestled through 8th grade, wrestled through most of high school. That's why I have all the pictures of me being a wrestling coach up there, because I connected to wrestling. So one day in October, it's either late October or beginning in November, I don't remember exactly, I think it was beginning of November after Halloween, I was in the hallway of our school and I saw a kid using breath spray. This is breath spray. I also have a little container here because it's going to play a role in today's story. It's the thing where you just go and you spray it into your breath and it makes your breath smell good. And I saw a kid in the hallways using it and he was talking to the ladies and the ladies were all digging him. You would say he had Riz. And I was like, you know what I would like? Riz. Although in old 1990s term, I just wanted to be cool. And I figured if I had breath spray, the ladies would dig me. And I knew the only thing that was keeping the ladies from flocking to me was really good breath. So I decided I was going to get breath spray. So that day after school, we had a wrestling meet. And unlike here, whenever you guys have like track or whatever sports thing where you have to either go home and your parents bring you back or you stay after school in the coach's room, high school is a little bit different. They just say, bus leaves at 5 o'clock, make sure that you're here when the bus leaves, and you can just go run around. And so we would run around all over the place. I lived in Noblesville, which I went to Noblesville High School, the town just north of here, and they had a little shopping center that was right outside the high school, like high school parking lot shopping center. Very similar to how the Walmart area is like real close and you could just walk right over to it. It was the same way in Noblesville. And after school, the wrestling team, we would all head out to McDonald's that was there. And then they had, and I went back and took an actual picture of the location. So right here, where I'm standing, is the McDonald's. And then over there is now an AutoZone, but it used to be a drugstore. And then if you look, this is the AutoZone. This building right there is Noblesville High School. So we would like literally just walk across the parking lot and then we would go into this place and it was a little drugstore, like a CVS type place. And so we went in there after school. It was me and probably 15 other wrestlers who were walking around. And I decided this was the day I was going to get my breath spray. And I decided I wasn't going to pay for it because I didn't have money. And plus, you know what's cheaper than buying it? Stealing it. So I decided that was the method I was going to go with. And so I was in there with a bunch of other wrestlers who were also stealing things because we were not the best kids. And they were all stealing candy, but I was trying to make weight for wrestling, and so I didn't really want to steal any candy. I'm like, I'll just get the breath spray, mac on the ladies, and everything will be good. Well, a couple things we're going to need to know. One, going into it, as you can see here, it had glass doors like this, and it had like a double glass door setup. where you'd have like the outside doors, and we didn't have these fancy automatic doors like back then because of the dinosaurs. You had to push doors with your hands. And so I had a wall in the middle that went this way. So you'd come in, push the door open, and then this was a plain wall, and you would turn and go that way to get into the store. And then there was the checkout area here, door to go into it. You would push it, go around the corner, and you would go out that way. And so I came in and was walking around through the CVS trying to figure out where the breast spray was because I'd never picked it up before. And walking around the store, eventually found it in one of the aisles. I think it was like $3 or something like that. And not wanting to be caught, I walked all the way over to this last aisle where it was like the wall of the building, and then like I think it was like, I don't know, some kind of actual drugs to help people. And I was walking, ibuprofen, and I was walking down that aisle, and I had packaging. And as I was walking down it, because it was cold out and I had a coat on, I just took the packaging, ripped it open, took the breast spray and put it into my inside pocket, crumpled up the packaging, and then just stuck it on a shelf, dropped it, and then just kept on walking. Walked around for a few minutes talking to friends, and I was like, all right, I am ready to leave and check out and be gone. So I go up to the front where the little checkout area is. And I remember I had a friend who was checking out at the time, and I walked by and I was like, hey, I'm going to meet you guys outside. I was like, I'm not getting anything. I'll just be out there. I'm like, all right, I'll see you in a moment. And walked through the little pushy door thing, and I did the little pushy door, and I had turned and was opening up this door, and I remember it was one that pulled towards me. And I had grabbed that door, and my hand was on it and was pulling it towards me when a hand came down on my shoulder. And the voice behind me said, were you planning to pay for that? And if you've ever been doing a bad thing and you get caught doing bad thing, there is a sensation that happens in the stomach region that is hard to explain, where it feels like it just goes and just like falls, like roller coaster feeling. And I had this just feeling of, oh poopy, I know I'm doing a bad thing, and whatever's voice is behind me is not going to be a good thing. And I'm a teen boy, and I would love to say teen boys make good choices, but they don't. So let me walk you through the process that was going through my head at this moment that I still remember to this day. My hand is on the door. I have the door open, and I can see daylight and clear sky and freedom merely like 2.5 feet away from me. There is a hand on my shoulder. And my thought goes, you're a wrestler. There is no way the person, don't get ahead of me. You have to wait and follow the journey. And my head goes, there's no way the person behind me is going to know the wrestling moves that I'm going to know. And I know how to break a grip. I know how to spin. I know how to throw. I've been wrestling for like 2 years now, so I'm almost a professional. And so I figure I can easily break this, and I'm young and athletic-ish, so I should be able to sprint and run and get away clean. That's what's going through my head. But at the same time, I realize if I run, there are 15 kids behind me in this store, and all it takes is one of them to rat me out and say my name, and they can track me down at the school. And I would like to say that my team was very loyal and would not turn on each other, but no. They would have ratted me out for the giggles at the very first moment. So I knew if I ran, they were going to catch me, not here, but later on at the school. And in my brain, I had to go, which is worse, getting in trouble right now or waiting and getting in trouble at the school? And I did one of the toughest things I've ever done. I let go of the door. I remember watching like the door go away, and whoever it was turned me around, and I came face to face with the pharmacist who was wearing the little white coat, and he had the packaging in his hand and was staring at me. And he goes, were you planning to pay for this? I was like, oh, you're giving me a way out. I'm glad I didn't try to hit you. That would have been bad. So I go, oh, yeah, I can do that. And he goes, and I started to pull out the breast spray. And he goes, then you should have done it the first time. And I went, oh, it was a trap. I'm like, that's not what's going to happen at all. And I go, that's not mine, which was my next follow-up, because that's every kid's excuse. And he goes, son, we have you on camera. And I went, like just deflated. I'm like, okay. And he was like, come with me. And he walks me back through the store, hand on shoulder. And I remember I had to walk past all of my friends, who then popped out of all the aisles to watch me get walked through this entire place. And he walks me through the store to their back storage room. They have like those silver swinging doors. And I got to go through the silver swinging doors to this back room area. And it had shelves with I don't know, ibuprofen and drugs and stuff just on the walls. And he brought me to this little back room, and there was a chair like my little red ones over there, except instead of the sled legs that had like the forelegs sticking out. Because I remember when he grabbed it, it made like that as he like slid it across the ground. And he brought it to the middle of the room and like slammed it down. He was like, sit down. I was like, okay. I just like sat down in the chair, and it looked like how you would imagine like the Russian movies where they get ready to like interrogate someone in the room and like clamp like little electrical things to them. Like that's how, like just me in like this big gray cinder block room with like things on the shelves. And I was assuming they were going to interrogate me or do something horrible. But instead he called the police. And it was over here to my left. There was a wall with a phone. I remember him just like sending him like, and he's like, yep. He's like, I got a shoplifter. Yep, please send an officer out. Yep, he'll still be here. All right. And then he just put the packaging down, and then he walks out and just leaves me alone in there. So it's just me sitting in this back room by myself, and I was like looking around trying to figure out how badly I had screwed up my life. I'm like, oh, my mom is going to kill me, my dad's going to kill me, I'm like, my teachers, oh, I can't even imagine what my teachers are going to do, I'm like, my friends, I'm probably off to the wrestling team, like all of these things start going through my head. And then I look to the right, and about as far away as Sanka is the back wall, with an exit door, emergency exit, right there, with like the little red handles, says like alarm will sound. And my thought is, if I push that door open, Noblesville High School is right there. By the time they get to this room and that alarm goes off, I will be gone, and there is no way they're going to catch me. That was the last thing that guy should have done, was left me alone in this room. I was not a cross-country runner then, but fear can make you run fast. And so I start planning how to do it in my head. And I would love to tell you that I stayed sitting there because I was a good kid and I decided to take my punishment like a man. But that's not why I stayed there. I, to this day, think I would have run if it hadn't been for one thing that stopped me. And it was his comment about me being on video. If he hadn't said that, I don't know what path my life would have taken to this day. And it was him saying I'm on video, and I realized if I ran, they would just take the video over to the school and show the admin, and then they would probably figure out who I was, knowing I was on the wrestling team, showing that, and I was like, which is worse, getting in trouble here or having them arrest me in the middle of class? And I thought getting arrested in the middle of class is the only thing that is worse than what I'm going through right now. And so I just sat there and stared at that door and considered running, but didn't. Finally, the double doors open up, and police officer comes in with the pharmacist right behind him. And I remember he was a big police officer, hefty boy, but just big. And doors swing by, and he comes in with the pharmacist, and the pharmacist like points down at the little package. I remember like the police officer like picking up and looking, and he's like, breath spray. And he's like, damn kid, how bad's your breath? And I was just like, aw. And he was like, not. And he walked over and he was like, stand up. And I stood up, and he turned around. I turned around, and he put handcuffs on me. I was no longer little twiggy child. I was now big twiggy child, and handcuffs could go on me. And if you've never had the privilege of having handcuffs put on you, good. They are awful. If you can feel your own wrist, there's a bone that is right below where your thumb connects. And that bone is where, when police officers are grumpy with you, they can snap the on, and it goes right on that bone, and it pinches it together, because that bone can move a little bit, and you can pinch it, and it smashes your bones together, and it is one of the worst pains that you can feel. They can also go a little bit lower, and then it doesn't hurt nearly as much, because you've got meaty bits there. This police officer snapped it right onto that bone. And I remember like snapping, I went, ew! He went, did that hurt? And I went, uh-huh. And he went, good. And I was like, oh. And he snapped it on the other one, and then did the holding your arms up to one side. I remember he held it up. And he was like, all right, son, let's go. And he walked me back out through the store. And I remember as he walked me through the store with arm held up like this, my friends were gone from inside the store. Small miracle on that one. And I don't remember everything that happened throughout this whole thing. It's like little bits and pieces will come back to me. My brain blocks out a lot of it. But it's weird the things your brain chooses to remember. Because one of them was, as I came out from this little back room, I was coming here, to my left there was a mom and a little girl. And the girl was probably like preschool age, like wee little child. I remember like looking over and seeing her, and she just looked so happy. Like I smiled at her, and I was like, hi. I was like, at least there's someone having a good day. It's not me. And I remember the mom looking at me, smiling, seeing the police officer, seeing how I was, and the smile dropping off her face. And then she grabbed her daughter and just moved her behind her, which seems like a small thing, but what it implies is I was such a dangerous person. She had to protect her child from me. And it was like this roller coaster feeling of happy child. Oh, I'm a piece of crap. And it was like, just like, and then the cop walked me all the way through the front of the store. We go out the front doors, and his police car was like sitting right outside this little front area. And I remember as we came out, you could look down the side of the building to the edge where it was, and there were 3 heads like peeking around the side of it, which were 3 of my best friends who had stayed to watch me get arrested, because that's what best friends do. They watch you go to jail. And so I remember I looked at him, I was like, huh? And the police officer who was right next to me, he looked up and saw them, and all 3 heads like disappeared. And I remember he laughed, criminal has a fan club. And I was just like, aw, piece of poo. And then he put me into the police car. And I got to sit in the front, not in the back. In the front, there was a shotgun bolted to the dashboard. I had to like put my head around as I was sitting down. And I sat down into it. I couldn't do the seatbelt myself, so he had to like lean in and snap the seatbelt because, the hands were behind my back. And after he did the seatbelt, I remember him standing back up and just standing there. And I remember I looked up at him, and he just looked at me with like this disgusted face when like, it's a short ride. Try not to steal anything. It's just like, oh, it's just like that makes you feel like, ugh. And he got in, sat down. I don't remember the drive, but Nobles was a small town. It took like 4 or 5 minutes to get to the police station. We got to police station. I don't remember handcuffs coming off. I know they did at some point. I remember being in his little office, which was like the size of my desk area. It was like his whole office. And I was sitting right across from him at a desk, and he did typing. I remember him calling my mom, and called her. And I remember like the conversation, like, yes, ma'am, we've arrested your son for shoplifting. Yes, ma'am, he's at the police station. Yeah, you're going to need to come pick him up. Like there wasn't like yelling or anything like that. And I was like, and then hang up. He's like, well, she'll be here in a little bit. And then me just sitting in this chair while he was right across from me and doing like a typing on report. He might have been typing, this kid is an idiot over and over again. I don't know. But typing. And I was just going through my head trying to keep myself sane as best I could. And honestly, trying not to cry. Because at that point I felt really sorry for myself and did not feel all that good. And I remember looking to my left, and on my left was, like in his little office, like this whole wall of wanted posters. Not exactly like those, but it was like wanted posters like that. And I saw this whole wall of wanted posters, and I was trying to distract myself so that I wouldn't start crying. And so looking at the wanted posters was at least a distraction. And I remember as I was looking to my left up here at the wanted posters, and the cop kept typing and looking at me, and finally he just stopped. And again, it's the little things that stay with you. And he just stopped and looked at me, and looked up at the posters, and looked at me, and I was like, You got family up there, huh? And it was just that little thing. And I was like, I went, no. And I looked down and he was like, yeah, you will. And it was just like, it was like that kick in the gut. I was like, I'm not talking anymore. And I just like looked at the ground. And I remember eventually my mom comes in, door on my right, door opens, and then she steps in. I had a good relationship with my parents, both my mom and my dad, as good as any teen can have with parents. And I remember she came in and just stood above me and just looked down at me. And I looked up at her, and there wasn't yelling. She only asked one question. And she's like, is it true? Did you do this? I just went, yeah, I did. And she went, I am so disappointed. And then just turned around and walked out. And I'm like, I didn't know if she was abandoning me. I'm like, do I leave all? I was like, And the cop just went, nah. And I was like, Just like I got up and followed her out. And we did like a little checkout thing. They have like a little booth that they release you. I remember like she had I remember just like standing next to her as she was doing something. And we went out to her car, which was this gray Pontiac Bonneville that she had. And it was cold out, again, like beginning in November. And I remember she drove, I sat in the front passenger seat. And I remember putting my feet up on the dashboard and like wrapping my arms around my knees and leaning my head against the window because it was cold. And the cold felt good against my head. And it was about a 10-minute drive home. And my mom didn't yell the whole time. She just talked. And it was all about how disappointed she was. And like, we didn't raise you this way. Why do you feel the need to steal? What kind of person are you? And it was just that over and over again, and feeding into how much of a piece of crap I already felt. And we get home, and she's like, head up to your room. She's like, when your dad gets home, I'm going to talk to him. And my dad was not violent. It's where I get a lot of my personality from. More just worried about disappointing him. It wasn't like he was going to beat me or anything, but I still was not looking forward to it. And I went up to my room and just laid down on my bed and just stared at the ceiling. And I remember going through and thinking about my teachers and how are my teachers going to judge me. My grandparents, how are my grandparents going to think about me? Part of it was the beginning of my freshman year of high school, and I was stealing the breath spray to ask a girl out. And I remember the thought was like, I can't ask a girl out. Like, what girl's going to want to date me? I'm now a criminal. I'm like the only criminal at our school that's not like the scary kids. So I'm like, there's no way a girl's going to date me now. So I'm like, now I have to go dateless throughout all of high school. And all of those things just kept crashing down on me. I heard my dad get home. I heard them talk downstairs. And then both of my parents came up to my room and walked in. And I remember I sat up on the edge of the bed. And when they came in to talk, my dad's reaction was not what I was expecting at all. And he was like, you're grounded. And I was like, well, yeah, I saw that part coming. And he was like, but we've talked, and the worst punishment we can give you is that you're going to go to school tomorrow. And you're going to go to school the day after that, and the day after that. And you don't get to miss a day of school until we're through with this. And I was like, that's my punishment, going to school? And I knew he could tell by my face that he thought I was getting off easy. And he laughed. And he was like, son, he was like, you don't understand. Your life changes from this point forward. This point forward, everyone looks at you differently. How you interact with people is going to be different. Your life changes moving forward. The worst possible thing we can do to you right now is make you go to school and face the other kids there. Face your coach and face your teachers. That's what you're going to have to deal with. He's like, you don't need us to yell at you. Right now, life is going to beat you down. You need love and support more than anything else. What you need from your mom and I is to support you, because the world is going to beat the crap out of you. And I, as a teenager, thought my dad was full of crap, and there's very little that he could know. Little did I know, he was not nearly accurate enough about how bad things were going to be. So, the next day, I go to school, and this is pre any kind of social media. I mean, back then, you had to physically call a person if you wanted to spread any kind of information. But the whole wrestling team knew. because I had gotten arrested right before a wrestling meet. And so they all knew something happened, and I knew word would spread. And I remember just going out to the bus the next day and getting on the bus to go to school and just stepping onto the bus. As soon as I walked up those little steps, the little gopher heads popped up, like all the kids like looked at me. Like you see them like look at me, look at each other, and then drop down and you hear I'm like, oh, it's starting. And as I would just walk down the aisles, like the kids would like just look at me as I would walk by them. And I got to my little seat and I just sat down and I was like, all right, that was weird, but I can get through it. I got to school, and someone had gotten to school early enough to take breath spray and mints all over my locker. So I had to get there and pull those off. When I walked throughout the school throughout the day, people would just throw mints at me as I was walking by. They would just like bounce off the top of my head, and kids thought that was hilarious too. Kids in the hallway would just yell criminal or banaka or breath spray or any number of things to me as I would walk down the hallways. It became just like that general joyous torturing of a kid type thing. And I had been put into advanced English for the first time ever my freshman year. Like I was all of 3 months into being in advanced English, and I did not feel like I fit. These were a whole bunch of smart kids, and then it was me. And I remember walking into that advanced English class where I had friends who were in there with me. And there was a girl in the class, not one I had a crush on, just a girl who I'd talked to a number of times. And again, it's these little things that haunt you. And I walked down the aisle to my desk, and I remember passing by her. She was sitting at a desk, and she had a friend to her left that she was talking to, and she had all of her stuff like stacked on her desk when she got to class and just set it down. And I remember I was like walking by, and she looked up and saw me. We just made eye contact, and there wasn't like anger or judgment in her face. But there was recognition of who I was. And what happened was, as I started to pass, and she saw who I was, she reached for her pile of stuff and then just moved it closer to where she was sitting and then just put an arm on it and then turned to keep talking. It seems like a small thing, but again, what you have to realize, what it implies, is that she no longer saw me as someone that she trusted. That I went from this person that she could joke around with in class to now she felt she had to move stuff away from me for fear I would steal it from her. Even though I wouldn't, and even though I'd never done anything like that to her, it was just now, it was that quiet feeling that it gave me. And I remember it made me feel worse than like the kids in the hallway throwing mints at me. And I know she didn't mean to do it in a mean way. It's just the way you react to things. So, went through the day, and the day was rough. It got worse, because I'm going to tell you about wrestling in a moment, and wrestling is where it got much, much worse. Got through it, got through the week, and about a month later, I had to go to court with my mom. If you've ever been to Noblesville, they have a town square, and you're going to see a building like this. That's where I had to go to court in front of a judge, like an actual courtroom. I had to dress up and go and stand in front of the judge. And I remember, like, he called me up in front of him and everything, and I had to, like, explain my case and what I did. And he had, like, this stack of papers, I'm guessing was my file. And I remember him, like, flipping through it, and he's like, all right, son. Well, looks like you've never been in trouble with the law before. Because apparently my one previously was not an officially one on the record, so yay for that. And I was like, yes, sir. I'm like, I'm a good kid. And he was like, and you have good grades at school. I did. I had A's my freshman year. And he was like, and it looks like you haven't gotten in trouble at school. And I'm like, for the most part, I hadn't really gotten in trouble at school. He's like, all right, so here's what we're going to do for you. And I went, okay. He goes, do you know what probation is? And I did, because my uncle, who I will tell you about coming up, was into drugs and in and out of the law and stuff like that. And so I knew about probation from him, as where you have to, like, go check in with the probation officer and stuff like that. And so that's what probation is. He's like, do you know what probation is? I go, yes, sir, I know what probation is. He goes, we're going to give you what's called deferred probation. And I'm like, oh, that's a big word. I'm like, I do not know what that one is. Like, you've now gone over my head. He was like, all right, here's how deferred probation works. He goes, we're going to make an assumption today that you're a good kid who made one poor mistake, and that you are going to learn from this one poor mistake. I'm like, absolutely, sir. He goes, I'm not done. I went, I'm sorry. He goes, so here's what's going to happen. Deferred probation means that we are going to put your probation off. Think of it like procrastination, where you don't have to start your probation unless you do something else wrong. If you don't do anything else wrong, this probation never happens. We are going to put it off until the next time you get in trouble. That way, you don't have it hanging over your head. And I was like, oh, sweet. I remember smiling. And I remember him seeing me smile. He goes, son, I'm not done. And I went, I'm sorry. He goes, here's how it's going to work. You are in my courtroom today. And this was Judge Barr, who I got to meet later on. He goes, I am the main judge in Noblesville. If your name ever gets run through the police system again, you will come before me again. He goes like, I am putting a note on your police record that if you are ever picked up for anything, if your name gets run through the system for anything, you come straight to this courtroom and you are going to be arrested on the spot. If you are out with friends at night and 11 o'clock is the curfew and it's 11:01 and you are out, they are arresting you and bringing you in here. If you are at a party and everyone else there is everyone else there is drunk and you are the only sober person, you are going to get arrested because you are near those other people. If I ever hear of your name, and I'm like, oh, I understand. He was like, anything ever happens, you come back here in this court, and you are going to get full punishment for whatever your new thing is, and full punishment for this. Do you understand? I'm like, oh, I understand. He's like, but if you make it to your 18th birthday, never getting in trouble, we wipe this from your record like it never happened, and you get a clean start. He was like, I'm going to leave your future up to you. And I was like, thank you, sir. So that is beginning of my freshman year. I'm 3 months in as a freshman. My birthday is May 18th, which is the very end of my senior year, which means I have to go throughout all of high school never interacting with the police at all, which is going to play into tomorrow's story. But at the time, very happy. And so I got to leave, and things were good. Well, here's a little bit of the fallout. One, I was on the wrestling team, and what happened to me on the wrestling team today would easily get the coach fired and a lot worse. But back then, it was just a day. So after school, that first day, I had to go back, where I had to interact with all the kids. After school that day, I had to go back to wrestling. And I found out how my coach found out I got arrested was on the team bus to the away meet. As they were driving, the coach was taking attendance, and I got to my name, and all the kids started laughing. They're like, he's in jail. And he's like, no, seriously, where's Brovi? I'm like, he got arrested. So then the whole team started telling him how I got arrested. Great story. Apparently, coaches don't like it when you get arrested on their team. Coaches. So after school, we have a wrestling room, which is how this was set up when you're in high school. It's like a whole padded room that you're in there. And I had to go to the wrestling from there. Well, Coach Knotts says, all right, we've had someone on our team who has made a poor choice and made everyone else on this team look bad. Because when one of you screws up, we all look bad for it. And I think we need to work it out of our systems. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And the coach goes, I think today would be a good throwing day. If you're not a wrestler, throwing is when you grab somebody and you throw them through the air. And so we're going to do a throwing day. And he goes, all right, let's partner up for throws. And I go, all right. Well, in high school, I was about 130 pounds because I was still mostly twig. And so I looked around for my normal partner so I could partner up with him, another kid in my weight class. And I was like, all right. And I was like, well, it could be much worse. Coach goes, Broviac, what are you doing? And I go, I'm finding a partner. He goes, son, we already have your partner. And I went, oh? He goes, you're going to partner with Corey Laux. Corey Laux is this guy. He is the heavyweight on the team, and he weighed about 270 pounds. This is me. I weighed about 130 pounds. Corey was a senior on the team. I was a freshman on the team. And he goes, your partner for today is Corey. And Corey just looked at me and went, and I was like, oh, that's not good. And he spent the day then throwing me, where he would grab my arm right around the head, and there is a safe way to throw and a not so safe way to throw. And the safe way is when you grab arm and head and you ease them down, you control their head and body so as not to hurt them. The unsafe way is when you put your hip through and you pull them like you're starting a lawnmower, and their feet go flying through the air and then you land on them. Really dangerous, illegal in wrestling because you can break them. Corey took it one level further. because he would grab me, and then as he threw me, he would jump into the air to give himself height. So I would land, and then he would land on top of me, and my ribs would go, and then back out again. And so we got to do this over and over again until it was time to switch partners. And then the coach goes, all right, let's switch partners. And I went over to Corey, and I grabbed Corey's giant tree trunk arm and his giant head, and I went, and I just literally hung on the front of him. And I was like, I go, Coach, I don't think I can throw him. And he was like, try again. And I'm like, not happening. Corey's just sitting there looking at me. And Coach goes, Corey, I guess you got to go again. And I went, huh? And so the whole practice was just him throwing me over and over again. And then tomorrow, we'll talk about how it gets even worse.